So on my watch, it is now 2 o'clock in the northern part of Europe, Copenhagen, Scandinavia. Welcome everybody to this webinar, release webinar. We have a short agenda I'll just present to you guys, and then we are ready to rock and roll. I'll just go back and say, as you can see in the bottom, presenters today will be Dana Cooksey, my colleagues, Wilhelmine Schmidt and Jose, and me. I'm Thomas Grønlund. The program for the next 45-60 minutes is, I'll just talk briefly about how we will run this webinar, and then we will present the Instructor Qualification framework, the Instructor Qualification training, and the processes around it. We will talk about hierarchy and governance of the whole IQT scheme. A short brief on the updates on the ACP and the CoHe training standards, and then we open for questions. And that is not totally true, because we will actually open for questions as we go along. So when we are presenting stuff and you have anything on your mind that you would like to get unfolded, you can just put your questions in the chat, and Wilhelmine will sort of coordinate the questions, and we will do our best to answer it as we go along.
And if you'll put your questions into the Q&A, we recognize some of these might need a little more time or another set of eyes, so we can get back to you on questions that maybe are very specific to you or more technical. But if you've written them to us, then we'll be able to capture them. Willa will let us know if there's something that's very relevant to what we're covering right now, and we've got time at the end as well.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, as you also can see in the agenda, the last part of the session is also to address the questions. We'll see how it goes. First, brief introduction of the presenters. Colleague Dana.
Yes, these are a few things about me. I helped Thomas with the IQT standard, as well as working on the updates to the requirements with Jose. So we'll go through all those things and hopefully be able to get you rolling with the list.
And Wilhelmine Schmidt. Here you are. You want to add anything, Wilhelmine?
No, I think it's a perfect summary, Thomas. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. And Senor Jose, you are there.
Yeah, nothing additional from me. I am heavily engaged in the requirements, so ready for any questions that you may have at the end of the presentation.
You could always say, Jose, you are the requirements by heart. Okay, let's jump into it. And yeah, that's me. I'm an old sailor, and I'm a learning guy. So I would like to start with a poll, just to see who are you, because we cannot see any of you, but we know you're out there. So I would like to just ask, what do you do? And we have some options that you can just click into. All right, thank you. A lot of training providers, some instructors, and other. Yeah, I had to stop the list at some point. But I guess you're, I don't know. But we're glad that you're here. Thank you for that. You're very welcome. Yeah. My next, and it is just my second and last question for you guys is, where are you in the world? It's interesting, I think, when we are standing here. I'm in my basement outside Copenhagen, and I know there are people from maybe all over the world. So it could be interesting to see, where are you actually? Please enter your thing. Yeah.
That's great to see we were able to cross some major time zones here. So thank you for joining. It's very early or very late for you. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
appreciate you joining, but we appreciate it especially when it's hard to
Very, very nice. Thank you for that. Yes, okay. We will jump into it. First of all, I asked this question to myself. Well, on behalf of you people, why do we actually need an instructor qualification framework in the GWO? And I've made 3 bullets to sort of describe the main purposes. We needed to set a global standard because there was a demand for that. A lot of people out there wasn't really sure what is a good instructor? What do we need as for an instructor? What does he need to her? What does she need to know and be able to do? So that is one reason why we developed the IQT standard. You should also provide support the some quality into your delivery of trainings. We have based the whole IQT on the GWO taxonomy and general adult learning principles. It's about student involvement and a lot of activity and not so much presentations and one-way talk. And that is what we practice a lot on the IQT. And the third one is about mitigating bottlenecks for new training providers and also for training providers scope extensions. And maybe Dana, you have a few more words to put on that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we've been working on these 2 projects simultaneously. So we'll focus starting on the instructor qualification standard, but we've supported it with an update to the requirements for training. And the reason those documents are working together is to try to address new ways of certifying trainers and recognizing the technical and instructional experience that's already out there, so that as new training providers are setting up or opening, or you're simply trying to add a new, get a new course on scope, that you have options that don't, depending on who you hire and where you are. So it's intended to create options, and that's one of the things that can be trickier about it, but there's some flexibility here to support people developing in new markets, new locations, and new ways.
Yeah, thank you. And I put a small clip from SP Wind in South Africa, training provider in Port Elizabeth, who is for now the first training provider to be certified to deliver the IQT training. And Paolo, he's got his own words on what he thinks that the IQT training can do for GWO trainings. I'll move on. What is the IQT standard about? It's 3 different trainings. There's a basic instructor training, instructor course like any other instructor course. We've just developed it in GWO together with GWO members, learning and development specialists. And we have based it, as I said before, we have based it on the taxonomy, the GWO taxonomy, and on general adult learning principles. It's a 9 days training for new instructors. Old instructors could also join if they like, but the main aim is purposes for new instructors. We had on one of the pilots last year, we had a guy with 25 years experience in teaching, and after 5 days he said, wow, I didn't know there was a world like this. And this is just to illustrate that too many of my age, maybe also your age, some of you instructors, it's nice sometimes to recap on some principles about teaching and yeah. So that's basically for new instructors, but everybody is welcome. If your instructors do not have time to join a 9 days update on adult learning principles, we have also developed a 3 days training, the crossover IQTX, a 3 days course for experienced instructors who knows how to teach and have done it for some time, but would like to get acquainted with the taxonomy and these student-involving exercises and practical exercises that we are working on the IQTX and the IQT. Finally, the third module in the standard is the IQTT. It's a 5 days workshop for very experienced instructors who want to deliver IQT instructor trainings. It is sort of a needless eye to enter these workshops, because this is where we in GWO can quality control the delivery of instructor trainings. If we want to get better trainings, better instructors, maybe also more heavy instructors out there, we have to make sure that they reach the quality level that we are aiming at. So these people, the trainers who teach new instructors, they really have to be qualified.
So maybe worth mentioning here, if you have looked through the standard, as we go through this, there's a lot of details. It's worth considering who you are and what you're looking for, what you're looking to achieve by using any of these. So these 3 modules are in the standard. The IQTT is delivered with Thomas or I. So the IQTT is organized, arranged, and delivered by GWO. So if you want to be an IQT trainer, you would still only be delivering the IQT and the crossover. And then, Thomas, I think what you said about the crossover is a really good point. We wanted to create a flexible option for instructors who are maybe coming from exclusively a technical background, but would like some instructional professional development. So this smaller course is to supplement. We'll talk a little bit later about gap analysis. This could be a gap training for instructors. So,
yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I'll move on. The picture is from one of these 5 days workshops in Copenhagen, where the IQT trainers, they turned their back on me, but I don't think it was for being insulting.
It's a nice reminder that it wasn't freezing at some point.
It was actually warm in Copenhagen at that time, yeah. And just to make one of our illustrations to sort of illustrate one of the basic thoughts in the IQT. It's built around this alignment triangle, where we really want to set focus on when we have learning objectives, aiming at skills, knowledge, or abilities on certain levels. Then we also have to do learning activities that talk into these levels and domains. So it doesn't make sense to present a long PowerPoint about something and then expect that people can go out and do something afterwards. So if they're supposed to be able to do something, they have to practice doing it. This is pretty cool when we are instructors, because then we don't have to talk so much. We just have to get people to work and learn, which is sort of nice. And of course, the third point in this triangle is the evaluation, the test. There should be no surprises in the final tests of a training. The test should show if they have practiced enough to be able to do what they're supposed to do. And I guess this could be open for long discussions, because I know many of us also like to make some surprises during the exam or in the final test. But it has to be fair. It has to be something they have practiced, so they have a chance to be able to do it. Then I put just 4 rhetoric questions maybe on the screen. First one, who can deliver IQT? Can be delivered by an IQT trainer, and the IQT trainer is the person who have been on the 5 days workshop with the IQT teachers. This is a certification. The IQTT is a personal certification. When you have done the workshop and you've passed it, then you get the certification in winter, and you get a badge you can put on your LinkedIn profile or in your mail or whatever. Your training provider, your employer, can put the same badge on your website. and get a certification or an audit from your auditor. It doesn't have to be a big audit. Jose, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are talking about a 2 hours audit done remote, where the auditor is sitting on his computer back home and just checking the lesson plans.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, and also checking that there are made lesson plans, of course, but also that the guy going to teach the instructor trainings actually have a valid IQT training record. Okay. Don't forget to ask questions. Wilhelmine is vibrating and ready to receive anything from you guys. So, can I just book a seat for IQT? Well, it's not just like any other training. We have, in 1 year, we have developed 13 IQT trainers, and we expect that level to be like that for the next year or two. We'll see how it goes. So it's not so many who enters or come through the needle's eye. You have to make an application with a CV and endorsement letter and stuff. And then we will observe your teaching online to see where are you in the teaching world. And we'll also make an interview to unfold uncertainties from the observation and the application. And then you will be invited to join the IQT workshop. It could be in Copenhagen, it could be in the States, it could be wherever in the world. We'll try to put these workshops wherever there's a need for them. Yeah. Is it mandatory for new instructors? No, it's not. I wish it was, but it's not yet. I hope it will be someday, but it's not yet mandatory. So this is a matter of training providers saying, we want to qualify our instructors on the pedagogical side to a level that is GWO endorsed, if you can say that.
And I think we got a question that kind of goes into that. It's, what about the already experienced GWO instructors? Would it be obligatory for them to become IQT certified? So not new instructors, but ones that are already
yeah, that's a good question. And again, yeah. When I propose that to the training committee members of GWO, they say, oh my God, all the training providers, we have 3,000 instructors out there. That is not going to happen. So no, it's not mandatory for experienced or already instructors. This is an offer for the IQT crossover. It's an offer to the present instructors actually to be upskilled. And I know Dana will put an end of that tale a little later in the presentation when we talk about the module stuff.
Yeah, and I'll even say now, thank you for sending that question, because even reading this, yeah, it's not mandatory for new instructors or for current instructors. It is, we'll go through the changes to the requirements. It may be something you want to do if you are considering adding modules, but no, this is not mandatory. It is an option. Again, we'll talk a little bit about the new flexibility that's available to you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and not right. Yeah, perfect. Excuse me. The world map shows where the 12 IQT trainers are. We have tried to be global. Somebody asked me once, how did you pick those 12 people? And actually, we didn't pick anyone. But when we began the IQT project almost 2 years ago, we in a newsletter we asked the whole world training providers who would like to participate in this project, and those who actually participated in the development project, they are the ones that are now, some of them are now trainers, and now the training standard is released, and we look forward to see some people that we don't really know enter to this scheme. So we really look forward to expand this global network. And when I say network, it's because it is a network. It's a network where we work together. Next week, we have 2 days of workshops where we will together make some lesson plannings for the IQT and the crossover, because the trainers out there that are getting more and more ready now to deliver. And it takes time to develop a lot of lesson plans, and it's also nice to do it together to ensure some quality level and that we're actually talking the same language and alignment of ambitions.
And for those who participated in the first round, who ran our pilots for us, then joined by our first IQTT workshop where we added 12 new trainers. These are people who've really put a lot of time and energy into developing the program and the materials we have now, and they have built quite a strong community and really believe in this work. So we can't thank them enough. And this community focused around sharing and consistency and supporting and developing the best program it can be has really been exciting and a wonderful outcome of this whole process.
And there's also a question getting into a bit of the network, or like the first one is if there will be an official GWO register of IQT certified instructors.
That's an easy answer or question. All that go through the IQT crossover, all the IQTT will get their winter training record. So they will be listed in winter. Yes. Yeah. Is that an answer?
Yeah, because the follow-up question actually that comes with it is if there will be an overview of specific contact details on the training providers and locations. So it's a bit more, it's in Winda, but I think the question is more if it's publicly available to see where they are.
Well, so this will be important as we go through is talking about the different levels. So if you're looking to take and participate in the IQT, we will be listing the IQT trainers and when the IQT course is available and in what regions. That will be hosted on our website.
Yeah, we will actually, we are trying, well, we have agreed with the trainers that we will make a calendar on the website where anyone could go in and see where is the next IQT training in my region or somewhere in the world, who will deliver it. So it will be all trainers and their training provider. They can enter this calendar and put their courses in. We don't really know how to administrate this calendar yet, but we are working on a web-based solution. So I think the short answer is yes, there will be something on our website where you can see where all IQT trainings will be offered, where and when and by whom.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll move on. My last slide here is just to show sort of the development path for if you want to become an instructor, do the IQT, you can attend instructor qualification training or the crossover. And then after that, you have to do some module technical education. And this is where Dana will now take over and talk about that. And you just tell me when to click and I will.
Yeah, perfect. If you want to go to the next slide, it's just to transition. So we'll be focusing now. I've included a couple of sections from the requirements for training. I've included small snapshots, but I really encourage you, especially those who are training providers, to go through. It's section 8 of the requirements for training, focused on the instructor qualification, what's required, what the processes are. So we'll be going over it on somewhat of a high level, but I highly recommend looking at it in detail. And you have the standard 6 months of leeway here before the requirements. You've got transition time. So Thomas, if you would go to the first slide, I wanted to point out a few minor changes in the text of the requirements. So this was one that came through a lot of feedback and interviews. So most of the written text of section 8 remains the same, but the reason I'm recommending reading it in such detail is when I think this is probably the most significant change we've made to the text itself is around this maintenance of a qualification. So if you haven't delivered in a period of 12 months, it doesn't automatically set you back to 0. You don't necessarily do the full POCD because, you know, if you've been teaching something for 20 years and you have a lapse of 13 months, you haven't lost all of your knowledge and skills. So it would be based on an assessment by the training provider to see where they need to refresh. Maybe this person can simply start with delivering again under observation, but we've made a change there. Now we'll get into the bigger changes. So yes, Thomas. So I've included the charts here. I do think the text around the charts is quite important, but something that you'll have to look into. So we have basically clarified here what was in the old version of the requirements. We had the POCD process listed, and then we mentioned an alternative process. What we've done here is really mapped out these two options. So the POCD process still exists. We've made some details clear here. One being you can use the 100 hours of vocational teaching experience to enter the POCD process. Much of this is exactly the same. Now you have some further options. If someone doesn't have that 100 hours, you can simply put them through the IQT. That can be their introduction. It's like Thomas wrote, it's this parallel experience. That's one way to start on the instructor process. And we've also given the option. So note that these are both ors. It's not mandatory. So you can have 100 hours or have gone through the IQT, or you can have formal instructor qualification. This is the first time you're going to see that meets or exceeds the IQT. That's documented with a gap analysis. I will point out a little later here, but we have a document to start supporting those gap analysis. So this is for something maybe as a training provider, you already have an internal instructor qualification program. You're going to just analyze that against the learning objectives in the IQT. This may be for places that, someone who's coming to you with experience in adult education and training, that they've gone through and have a bachelor's in this. So these are different options in order to start the POCD process, which we've listed out here. And then some minor changes in the assessment. So we have specified here that if you're having them signed off by an experienced GWO instructor, they have to be certified in the module that they're signing off. And we're looking at if auditors are doing the sign-offs, that they also have an instructional background. So we've been communicating with the auditors and the auditor training to make sure that this is clear as well. And then the documentation and final assessment is the same as it previously was. So we've made a little visual here to walk through the process and also mapped out your options as well as the required documentation.
We have I think the question is a bit related, Dana.
Sure.
But not because the question is, does this mean that if the instructor delivers GWO fire awareness training on a monthly basis, he doesn't need to refresh his GWO fire awareness certificate? But I think that's more into the specific training instead of the IQT. Yeah.
And actually, this is something I've heard Jose and Chris talking about. I believe you do still have to keep your certificate active. Because delivering a course can be different than participating in a course. Jose, tell me if I'm wrong.
No, that's perfectly correct, as you have explained.
No, the note that I pointed out was really specifically about there are some instructors who may lapse in delivery for 12 months. And we really just wanted to make the note. We had gotten a lot of feedback that there are certain courses that they don't offer particularly often, or that person was just in a different role. And so having them start from the beginning of the instructor process it's not beneficial to them. So hopefully this is pretty close to what you've seen before. So Thomas, if you'll go to the next slide, we have a similar visual. It has the same structure. So this is the instructor qualification process. Some things to point out. You cannot use 100 hours of vocational training to use this process. You actually have to have an instructor training. So that could be through the IQT or something that meets or exceeds the IQT. So again, it's not mandatory for this process either. We've got that gap analysis. So if you, again, come in with that formal instructor training, whether it's through a training provider or bachelor's program or legal requirements, you should be able to map that out against the IQT. And we'll talk about the gap analysis a bit further. Now, this is where we've got a little bit more flexibility and tried to map out some options. As we did analysis on this process, what we really want to validate here is the technical experience of instructors. That we have a lot of people coming in with deep technical knowledge that really is much richer even than a POCD process. So we're looking at instructors need to have technical knowledge and instructional knowledge. So the way in which you meet that should be unique both to your instructors and to your training provider, your location. So we've tried to create flexibility here while making clear what documents you need to make this, to document this process. So this would still allow you, if you had someone who's gone through the IQT, to build their module-specific process. They still may do a POCD process here. That is one way to do it. You may have something, again, internally. That's the way that you prepare instructors. You really are just trying to meet these, the content, competency, personal plan, a risk assessment of this instructor delivering the training, and their training plan. Each of those are actually defined in the requirements for training below this table. So we've given you a little bit more detail. And in what I believe is a first, we are also piloting this process. So we wrote this, we really worked on the details of it, but now we're taking it out to see how it's being interpreted by our auditors and by our training providers. So we are going to continue to support the rollout of this process. If things are unclear or if there's more that you need from us to make sure this is successful, it's something that we've put this out, but that we'll continue to develop further. Now, here's another level of flexibility. If you're using this process, knowing that your instructor has good instructor training, they've got deep technical knowledge, that gives you some flexibility on who does the assessment. And this is another way that we're trying to support the flexibility and limit bottlenecks here, is that the sign-off can be done within the training provider. And then again, you just have to look at the documentation and final assessment being the same. And a real new point here is that instructors that use the instructor qualification process would then be registered in WINDA. So currently, this is available in part because we would like to start to see who our instructors are, who's using this process, and that will help us to develop it further. Right now, we have a system where you would register in WINDA and we can basically refund the credits. This would not be a WINDA fee. It is meant to make sure that we have the information in order to best support training providers and instructors, but not an additional charge. The one piece of text that I think is really important here in the requirements, it's just before this, in order to use the instructor qualification process as a training provider, you have to have your process approved by a certification body. So you would basically develop a process, develop your gap analysis, what the content, competency, and personal plan templates or documents you'll be using. And once that's approved, then you use it on your individual instructors as you bring them along. If you have an internal program, you're going to complete the gap analysis once. You don't redo that gap analysis for every instructor. Same thing if you have a local requirement or a commonly used instructor training, then some of these will have multiple functionalities.
There's a question about the two pictures the two tables you just showed, Dana.
Yeah, please.
It says to who do the two charts apply, and why the difference?
Okay, so they are, I'm really glad they showed up in the requirements kind of just side by side. So these apply to basically instructor qualification. So either a new instructor or someone adding a module. So this is for the initial certification of an instructor. Now, I think this is a good question to look at too, because if you look at POCD, if you have someone who's currently an instructor, but they want to add a new module, they actually do the full POCD process. Whereas, Thomas, if you go to the next one, if you do the instructor qualification process, you know, you don't go through IQT every time. You just go through IQT one time, or you just do your instructional background once, and then you develop your module specifics based on your different competencies. So someone coming out of the field is actually going to have a lot of technical knowledge that they're just then developing a little further in order to be able to deliver those trainings. So currently, new instructors, current instructors, they would all have the option of using each of these processes.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that ties into the question that's also in the Q&A about, for example, a person who has always been a firefighter or first rescuer and has more than 100 hours of teaching experience, but has never participated in the GWO BST or fire awareness, for instance, or first aid. Can he be a course instructor?
So it's a great question. This one's, it's too specific for me to just give you a yes or no, but I think this is exactly what you do is you take that person who, you know, maybe they don't need to do the POCD to learn the content, but rather look at this alternative instructor qualification process. And again, if you are a training provider, you do have to have your process approved, but that's a one-time event. Once you have your process approved, you can use it for multiple instructors. So we're hoping that it starts to incur more benefits over time. Thomas, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to, because as you said before, if you do not follow the POCD, but you follow another process, would you have to do the IQT, or do you have to make the gap analysis between what the ambulance driver's education, instructor education is and what the IQT is? The reason I'm asking is because the GWO taxonomy is quite important to understand the whole standards as an instructor. So you really have to have something at least on the same level if you don't have to do the IQT.
And it's a good point. And that's, we'll look at it too, because I think this is one of the reasons that the crossover training can be quite valuable too, because you might have someone who has a lot of instructor experience, but then going to this 3-day crossover really focuses on the GWO specific functionality of being an instructor, and then closes those gaps between the difference of this field and this field, and what our specific requirements are. So I think if you want to go forward talking about the gap analysis further might be the next step. Yeah, there you go. So in the IQT standard itself, in Annex 5, we have listed all of the learning objectives from the IQT. So currently this is the foundation to build a gap analysis against. So if you're looking at your internal programs, you're going to have a lot of this information. If you're looking at programs that most people are coming out of, like Thomas said, a lot of this is foundational. So you could actually cover quite a bit of it in most instructor trainings. What will be most interesting is what gaps we're seeing. Now, currently, we're able to offer the crossover to meet those gaps, but there's also lots of different avenues for gap training. But if it's a document that you will need, this is the first support that we can provide, but I was talking with Chris, who's our head of training quality assurance, and this is something that we're taking into a pilot actually next week to look at further, is how can we help you meet the gaps. So there's 6 pages in here from which to build that required documentation. Thomas?
Can I just support this to say that a question could be from you guys, why do you have this focus on learning objectives? 6 pages, are you crazy? No, we are not, because many learning and education programs are described by content, but nobody says, what are they going to do with this content? So we have decided to use learning objectives because that actually tells us what can this person do after the training, which is actually what we're looking for also when we're doing gap analysis.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there's time, there's also some questions about the assessment and from the previous slide.
Sure.
So on who will do the assessment in the table 8.1.3.
Yeah, And so this one was exceptionally complicated to write because we are trying to give the training provider who is the duty holder for their instructors. They're the ones who's responsible for the quality of their instructors. We're trying to give them that final deciding role. So it's hard here to be very specific and try to allow for you to make that decision. So you may actually have two people, someone who's signing off on their content competency and someone who's signing off on their instructional capabilities, because those can often be different things. We actually went through just this term where it says the training provider must verify. That has gone through quite a few changes, whether we were saying, well, is it the head of training? Is it the, who is this specific person? But that is up to the training provider, is that you have to document who did this sign off. You have to document that they did successfully meet the assessment. And then your new instructors get registered. So we've allowed some flexibility here, again, to allow for not being hindered by a bottleneck where you have to have an instructor from that module from another training provider. So you still could use an internal auditor. You still could use that auditor that has the IQT qualification or instructional background. And it should be clear here, again, in creating options, we are saying IQT because it's what we've provided and it's what sets the baseline. But this is not meant to create bottlenecks, but rather to create parallels, options. We're just showing you where the standard is so that you can meet it in a way that is successful for you.
Great, thank you.
And Thomas, I think you can go past this one. Okay, so I have two maps here. We are continuing to work on support documents to make sure all of these things are clear, because even as we have worked with new IQT trainers, there's lots of questions because there's lots of levels to the work that we're doing. Because I think one thing we can talk about that we really maybe haven't yet is that IQT certified instructor. So now you have someone who doesn't have those 100 hours, but rather they've gone through the IQT. So they're an IQT certified instructor, but all they've done after they've done those 9 days is learn how to start instructing. So they actually need to make sure they still have that content competency, and maybe they're coming out of the field, so they've got that. Now they have this new education and instruction. They've got to still put those two together, and that's going to be happening in the training provider. And what process do they need to be finally signed off? So we've tried to map out how different people would interact with the different levels of this process, because the IQT and the IQTX will be out delivered by training providers around the world. Thomas and I will be hosting IQTT workshops along with some other IQT teachers, some who have joined us already through the development. I imagine some new ones sooner than later, to make sure these programs are available and in the right regions in the world, as well as auditors. So these courses are available to auditors, but then they're also audited slightly differently, since the IQTT isn't something that gets on scope. A few of these are now audited specifically through desktop audits. So we're developing documents like these to continue to support the rollout and clarify some of these questions, because it's a very big and very new program. And Thomas, if we go to the next one, I even made one with less words on it to try to break it down another way. And we're actually looking to support this on the website as well, so that you can have this this end goal in mind. Who are you and what do you want? I'm a new instructor and I want to be certified in this. Where do I go? Or I'm a very experienced instructor and I want to deliver IQT. Where do I go? So we are working on landing pages and information specifically that'll be on the website to help answer those questions and get you the information you need to move forward with these processes. So this is actually the exact same information from the last chart. just done differently. Thomas, next one.
Yeah.
And that actually does loop right back around. So there we go.
Yeah, this is just to recap on what we just talked about, that the old people, teachers, deliver the IQT workshops. They deliver some trainings, trainers who go out and do IQT and IQT crossover trainings. And as I could see from the beginning of the webinar today, that a lot of you guys are actually training providers, and well, you could consider to make a business case out of this, to have the IQT on scope. That would take that you have some IQT instructors that are experienced, and then in a year or whenever, how experienced they are, they can join an IQT workshop, IQT workshop, and then you can get it on scope. If you don't want to get it on scope, but just want to have your instructors up qualified, you can put them on the IQT crossover wherever that will be delivered around the world. It should be possible to find a place near you. And then you'll get instructors who do things a little different. And what we want to say, okay, here comes one from the bottom of my stomach, close to my heart. What I think is needed out there in the industry is that we have a dialogue with our participants, that we talk to them about what does this actually mean to you? How will you bring this out into your work in the industry? How will you take responsibility of doing the right thing, create good habits? This is what the new instructors, they will also focus a lot on. It's not just something you can put in an Excel sheet and say, now we have talked about it. You have to be sure that these people who go out there, that they actually do what they're supposed to do and do it safely. And that takes maybe another way of teaching that some training providers do today. More dialogue, more hearts and minds. Yeah. Okay, that was a little one from my inner circle. I'll move on. Yeah, don't cry, Jose. I saw you just getting some wet in your eyes. The calendar on the IQT for now is that the only one offering IQT trainings now is SP Wind in South Africa, because they're only one certified. I know that Wind are done Poland, and then we have some in the UK and also in Texas. Training providers are getting ready to launch and get certified. And as soon as they deliver their calendars, we will put them on our IQT calendar on the IQT web thing in the GWO website. The workshop to develop trainers, we are running one workshop in Copenhagen in April. That'll be me and Claire Wright from Australia as the other teacher. 5 days in Copenhagen in the spring. What's not to like? We'll go swimming in the harbor every day. And then Dana will deliver one workshop in October, expectedly in Denver, Colorado. And we are not quite sure whether it will be me or another teacher who will support Dana on that one.
Yeah, and I would say that there's some tentative nature to the dates as well, just because we're waiting to see when the awards will be scheduled this year. I know that'll come up later. So these dates are not set yet, but this is the tentative plan, and we should know quite soon if this is the official plan.
And then the last one is the refresher for the IQT trainers. They have to refresh their competencies every 3 years. There's no refresher on the IQT or the IQT crossover. That's a standalone thing. But for the trainers, they have to refresh every 3rd year, at least, to maintain their training record in winter. And we'll do that in September in Hamburg on Monday, where the Wind Europe conference begins on Tuesday, the day after, on the 24th of September. So if people are going to the Wind Europe thing anyway, they might as well join the IQT refresher on the Monday. Yeah. So
maybe before we move on to the ACP, then we have some questions in the Q&A. The first one related, I think, to this slide is how to enroll an instructor for the IQTT session in Denmark.
Yeah, we have a pretty, not complex, but we have a very structured application process, which I would like to share. I'll not do it here because it's quite complex after all. But you have to be an experienced instructor. You have to have the IQT or the IQT crossover as a basis, or something similar. And when I say similar, it should be with adult learning principles of student involving and constructivistic learning mindset and stuff. But you make an application, put on your CV. You have to document that you have been teaching for a couple of 1,000 or 2,000. No, I think is it 2,000 hours, 1,000 hours? I think it's 2,000 hours. And then we will go through the application, look at the CV. We will observe your training. You will do one of your normal standard courses. You can put a camera in the back of the classroom, and we'll see how do you actually do this stuff that you have written about. And then afterwards, we'll do an interview to find out where are you a training provider? Are you willing to offer open courses? Because this is a community thing. The IQT community is not something that the training provider will just do for his own sake. You'll have to do it. You have to see the business case in doing open trainings for your neighbor training providers, because we don't want 100 training providers doing IQTs, because then we lose track of the quality. So we want the good ones to do it, and that means that the good ones will have to offer the trainings to the other ones who wants to become good ones as well.
But we will put a link to the application on the website. Again, we'll have a lot of the IQT things together on the website because we are trying to build community here. And it is unique because this is going to be so far the one course that doesn't replicate. So if you do become an IQT trainer and you start delivering IQT courses, no one's going to be doing a POCD process with you. So we're asking as many people as are interested in delivering it, definitely apply. Let us know you're interested. We have yet to run completely public applications. So we're certainly open to the fact, depending on how many applications we get, that there may be a waiting list or we're just hoping that we have that problem, right? We have so many highly qualified people that want to deliver. So when we start to see and gauge the interest, then we'll know how to move forward.
It's a brand new program, and we will also have to sort of find our way through it. I was just thinking that application for no, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
great, thank you. And then two questions on auditing. If it refers back to the two tables you showed, Dana, if this all will be checked during the annual audit, so is it an additional day to go through the 4 that are already there? And then another question that relates to the audit is who approves the training process? Is it a third-party auditor?
I can take this one, Tana. Basically, the one who approves the process, it will be the certification body through the auditor. As you know, they do now with the existing 2 ways to qualify instructors, or the ones existing before this new instructor qualification process, the POCD and the alternative process, and then in regards, whether an additional extension of the audit or an additional duration of the audit, is needed. The answer, is that in this first phase, in which the process will be approved, there is an expectation that some more time may be dedicated to this. But it shouldn't be that much different, moving forward, because once the process is approved, basically the next audits will be based on the sampling of records, to ensure that the process is being followed.
Great, thank you, Jose. And then a question about, I think it's a bit related, is when will it be considered a requirement for auditors to have received the training they audit?
Well, that's an interesting question, not specifically related this topic. And the only thing I can say is that all options for training quality assurance are being, analyzed, and a key part of this is the qualifications of the auditors. So that is something that is I would say constantly being looked at. For example, I know most of you may be familiar, but at the moment we qualify the auditors initially through what we call AQT, which is a course with 4 days duration. But then not only this, but every auditor goes through a 1-day training every year in what it is named the Auditor Development Training. And the benefit for things like this, or for this 1-day course, is that, for example, the key focus area in this year's ATT is going to be, of course, the new instructor qualification process, and teaching the auditors on how they need to audit the new process. So that's what I can share at this stage.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jose. I think we move on because time is flying when you're having fun, and I think we must have a lot of fun because time is really flying. I'll just move on the slideshow.
We have a very brief addition. Go ahead. We've got really a small update to the CoHe standard. So a little bit of context, if you weren't aware, last year we wrote a guideline with American Clean Power, and we were looking at how GWO training meets the ANSI standard in North America to get that entry-level wind technician started in the field. And in that process, we found a few things that were suggested to the training committee that we make these changes to our standards in order to make a better global minimum. So this is an ongoing process. They are generally quite small changes, but we're looking at creating that standard. So Thomas, if you go to the next one, the ones that were released in December were to the CoHe standard. So we've got the actual changes here. So these really are not technical. They're text-based clarifications. We have been having fun. So something to read through and look at. Maybe really it's a lot of times just creating more context for something that was in the standard and to what the impact of that may be. So have a look through if you are delivering CoHe, and keep your eye out. We'll have more updates coming soon. Okay.
Thank you. And I'll just make a short brief about what are we actually doing in the team or in the secretariat right now. Training wise, we have just launched the LIFT standard draft. We have reviewed it, and we did more than 450 smaller and not so small changes to the standard. Nothing in content, but just clarifying stuff to make it more clear to auditors and instructors what do we actually want to see in this element and in this element. So this public hearing draft is now on LinkedIn, and if you are on LinkedIn, find it, join the survey, and give us some feedback on the standard if you like. That will be most appreciated. Another thing, Virginia is getting ready to launch the GWO Safety and Training Award Forum. We're not quite sure where it will be, but it will expected to be sometime in the fall, 2024. Newsletter from February will inform you on the ongoing process. And the last thing I just want to share is the instructor pages on our website. Looks like this. We have made a new thing on the instructors, for instructors, to support instructors, to inspire instructors, to sort of take the first step in building this IQT community where instructors actually get together and develop stuff together and help each other. And so this you can find a lot about on the website. And well, William has run the Q&A for an hour now. On the right side, you'll see the GWO Instructor Quality Provider badge. This is a badge that we are offering for training providers and IQT trainers, so they can flash on their website and on their LinkedIn profiles or whatever that you want to flash it, that you are actually part of this community supporting GWO instructor quality. And honors to those who carry the badge.
I know we're out of time. I got two. There's 4 questions in the chat. I got 2 I think we can answer quickly, and the others we'll make sure we'll answer in text. But if you can have 1 sentence, Thomas, on what's the benefit for a new instructor to attempt to gain the IQT certification?
1 sentence.
To join the community, to be more professional in your teaching skills. And actually, it is much more fun to teach when the participants are working, doing stuff, than when you're just presenting and presenting and presenting. So that is bonus number 1 from the IQT.
Perfect, thank you. And then the last one we'll do now, because we're out of time, is if the recording will be available, because we're recording, the recording and the slides, if they will be available.
Okay, so It is now 3 o'clock on my computer, 15:00. Time is up. Thank you, everybody, for joining. You can see our mail addresses. If you want to continue, send us a mail, reach out. We are here.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.